Attention on deck.
Hey, good evening, Ron. How you doing today?
Doing good. Real busy. Real busy. How's everything going in sunny Florida?
Actually, I'm up in Nueva York this week, so
I missed the background.
It's the background. Taking care of business. Little business in Monroe today. Met a couple of retired MOSs. Wife was talking to them for a while. Great people. They actually ended up leaving the job. Some of them vested out, couldn't take it anymore. So talking to the real people out on the streets there, and really good people, So they've been busy. Yep.
Yeah, very much so. We got a lot to go over tonight. It's a busy night on the Finest Unfiltered Network. They had an interview this morning of a city council member candidate, and so we have the executive perspective now, and then at 18:30 they're going to go live on a pre-debate space on X, on John McCarry's X, followed by the 7 o'clock debate. We're going to try and be off the air by 7 o'clock so we can all watch the debate. And then we're going to have an X space afterwards on John McCarry's X and go over what we felt, how the debate went. We'll talk a little bit more about Curtis Sliwa and the New York City mayoral race later on, but we got a lot to get to beforehand today. We're going to be talking about, can the NYPD arrest federal agents? And this is because of a letter sent by a local congressman that he wants the NYPD to start arresting federal agents if they violate local state laws. So we'll get into that. And then we'll talk about a big incident that happened yesterday up here in New York City on Canal Street. Anybody familiar with Canal Street in the area? A lot of illegal vendors going on. The federal authorities, multiple agencies were together doing an operation. They got overcome by a crowd. We'll talk about what's going on with that and what goes on over on Canal Street and everything else. The NYPD's response or lack thereof to that incident. We'll talk about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, who overturned the stay for President Trump to deploy troops out to Portland. And like I said, we'll close it out talking about the debate when we get there. But first, people say, we criticize, we're negative. We do Monday morning quarterbacking. And what we talk about with Monday morning quarterbacking all the time is that, we're not doing it to criticize. We're not doing it to hurt anybody. We're doing it to help. We're looking at instances and we're breaking it down. What do we think could have been done better? What was done good, we highlight. And what do we think could be done better next time so that people can do their job safer and more efficiently in the future? But, sometimes there's just such exceptional work that's being done that it has to be highlighted. And I was always a big proponent of that. I know you're a big proponent of that we highlight great police work. And the NYPD News Twitter or X feed put out a post today for an incident that happened back on October 10th. And it actually got me a little emotional. And I'm throw that up here now. And we'll just talk about it for a couple of seconds before we move on.
He must be 1 minute out.
He's been talking from. He's not showing color at all, so it's coming out foamy.
Please.
He's good.
Yeah. He's good. He's good.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. It's okay.
Hey.
What's up, boy?
Yes.
Oh
my God. Say no, I mean, I'm okay.
First one?
Last one.
So, just outstanding work. And you and I discussed this before the show. And, you were an EMT. I was an EMT. I was an EMT instructor. I worked for a 9/11 ambulance on Staten Island before I got on the job. And baby jobs are always the worst. Even with the police department, we respond to how many baby jobs, right? Where kids are injured or seriously injured or seriously ill or victims of heinous crimes. And sometimes police officers don't understand the medical complications of a high fever and how kids can go into, febrile seizures, and they think that they're not responsive and they're not breathing. And, sometimes they might overreact a little bit, initiate CPR when the person's the infant's not really in cardiac arrest. And you're like, oh boy, did they do more damage than good. You can tell in this video that child was limp. That child was unresponsive. That child was not breathing. That child had a complete airway obstruction. That officer followed his training, whether it was prior to the job or from the CPR training that he learned in the police academy. He followed his training with those back blows. He cleared that airway obstruction. And as you saw, that baby perked right up, cried a little bit, but was responsive and playful at the end. So kudos to that officer in the 115. God bless you. You saved that child's life.
Yeah, you have to say that the response time was excellent, right? Because you got to figure if they were able to save that child, I mean, they got there pretty quick. They, like you did, they executed it appropriately with the back blows, holding the child, in the downward position, so anything that's lodged in the throat would come out. And I don't think you could hear a better cry, right, in your life when that young child started crying again, and that it's all good, and I'm sure the parents are ecstatic. And it's good that he followed his training, whether it was like from the department or previously, hands on, and wasn't afraid to get involved immediately. You met years ago when you weren't trained as a cop, right? You would be like, oh, put a rush on the bus, which meant have the ambulance hurry up, but you didn't even do any the beginning of CPR or fix an obstruction or anything else. So I mean, he just really went above and beyond and followed exactly what he was trained on. I'm glad the department does that training now. So if he didn't get it from the department, I'm glad that he got it out on his own, but he did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Followed his training to the T, had that baby down, had the head lower than the feet, was giving back blows. I think maybe a little hesitant, could have been a little stronger on the back blows. It's tough because you're afraid you want to hurt the baby. Thank God it was a positive outcome, and he was able to clear that obstruction. So we got a lot to go through today. It's
Hey,
tough.
did you see the baby? You see the baby was wearing a police and fire department pajamas.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I didn't notice that. Yeah,
pretty ironic. So, but
yeah. Hey, listen, it's tough. This is a self-produced show, so it's tough for me to have the conversation, put up the graphics, go through the comments and everything else. So Operation Breadbasket, I don't want. I enjoy the engagement. I appreciate the engagement. I don't mind that sometimes your comments are sarcastic or a little critical. We don't mind that. We're a First Amendment forum, but you can't spam the chat on me. All right, try and keep your comments relevant to the conversation, because if you're spamming it, and I can't. I'm gonna have to put you in a timeout because I just can't keep up to it, and I can't keep up with everybody else, and give everybody else a chance. All right. You're asking a legitimate question here. If I was a CO of that officer, what am I doing for them after this incident? I'm gonna absolutely highlight them. They're probably going to be cop of the month. I had small tokens of appreciation that I used to give out. Pens. We talked about it. A personal challenge coin that only people earned for doing a great job. Things like that. Give them what's called a Commander's Day. For people that don't know, that's a very limited amount of days that commanding officers are given to give to officers for exceptional work. It's an extra day off. So things like that, highlight them in that, and of course acknowledge them to the fullest extent.
Yeah, I mean, you got to praise him in public, right? You tell everybody what a great job he did, and yeah, whatever you can do for them, Commander's Day or whatever, give him that golden 28, right? That next time he needs a day off, I don't care whether we go below minimum manning, you get the day off. You did a great job. There's perks you can give him. So, up now, like 92 Charlie says, a 28 printed on a gold paper. Absolutely, that's the best bet. That might work better than a Commander's Day. So
yeah. Just real quick, in 85, Lily, is an officer needs assistance. So it's a really fast response. Other officers are gonna step up really quick. Yeah. And as far as that golden 28, it's pretty funny because I just took the stack of gold copy paper that I used to have for golden 28s, legitimate golden 28s that I used to hand out. Because a golden 28 is different from a Commander's Day. A Commander's Day is just an extra day that actually legitimately goes into your time bank. A golden 28 is like a step below. It's signed by the executive, and there really should be no excuse to take that day off, but it comes out of your own time. And I just gave that gold paper to my daughter to draw on and play with just the other day. So it's funny that you brought up the golden 28s and the gold paper. There's the answer. No, so yeah, again, great day. Great to see what's going on out there with that. So let's move on. Let's get right into our first topic, right? We have a local congressman, Dan Goldman. He sends a letter to Police Commissioner Tisch, and he asks the NYPD to bust feds if they step out of line. So, like somebody already asked, I think it was. I think it was Operation Breadbasket asked in the beginning. How are the feds breaking the law, right? And what are we going to arrest them for? So what he writes is, I write to request that the New York City Police Department be prepared to strictly enforce state and local laws in order to hold federal agents accountable for any unlawful actions that they engage in, including potentially through arrest and prosecution for felony violations. When they are acting outside the scope of their legal authority, they are no different than anyone else, and their conduct is subject to New York criminal laws, including felony assault, he wrote. In advance of federal immigration operations in New York City, similar to those occurring around the country, it is imperative that NYPD officers receive proper training and instruction on bounds of federal civil immigration authority so they can be prepared to enforce state laws prohibiting criminal conduct, including through detention and arrest where appropriate. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Dan is out of his mind. Okay, because listen, can you arrest a federal law enforcement? Yeah, you can if he's off duty or she's off duty, and they're not acting within the scope of their employment. So if you saw a federal agent was driving drunk and you pulled him over, yeah, you could arrest him for DWI. But do we arrest our own when something's done wrong? No. What we do investigations. So what he should be referring to really is, how about let them do the investigation on whether or not the arrest was lawful. That's their job. If they're enforcing their law, then let them enforce it. But for him to say that you're going to have active NYPD officers that are working and grab an ICE agent or an FBI agent or Homeland Security and put them in cuffs. First of all, what NYPD police officer would want to do that? I know I wouldn't. I wouldn't feel right about it. And that's not our job. We're not in here to enforce, make sure that the federal laws are being done correctly. So, I mean, it's totally obscure. I think that young Dan Goldman is just looking to get his name out on the news media and get interviews on Newsmax or whatever the case may be, so that he can express this ludicrous idea. I think it's totally preposterous, and I mean, he's just not. He should really look up the law, look up the clemency law. Look up at the Supreme Court, look up these things before what was the old adage? Before you engage your mouth, make sure your mind's in gear or whatever. And clearly, he's off. He's not thinking properly. He's making stuff up.
No, and I had somebody close to me today question the same thing about if they're assaulting someone, and my response was, what we say all the time, right? Police work doesn't always look pretty. And police work, gets a little rough sometimes. It gets a little hands-on. So when you have people that are actively engaging in civil disobedience, that's one thing. But when they're actively engaging in accosting federal agents, interfering with official business of a federal agent, touching federal agents like we see constantly, banging on their cars, surrounding their cars, running their cars off the road. And then the news just comes on and says, oh, the federal ICE agents were engaged in an operation and they shot and killed someone today. Well, that person ran their car off the road, boxed their car in, and had a firearm. We forget the little details, right? When we go out there and, certain mayors that we talked about last week want to put out their narrative. But when you are blocking the movement of a federal agent that's conducting their official business and you get pushed and you fall down on your little tush, oh well, sorry, not sorry. It happens. Get out of the way, comply with the order to move, instead of being so tough with your mask, not because of COVID, not because you're afraid of any kind of anything else, but because you don't want to be identified, right? And then for the other side, they're going to say, oh, well, the federal agents are wearing their masks too. Well, they have more to fear because people are doxing them, people are threatening them, people are threatening their families. So they have a right to be afraid, whereas you want to go out and you want to act up and you want to get involved in these civil disobedience actions, but physical civil disobedience, not peaceful, right? You have a right to peaceably protest. You don't have a right to actively engage in obstruction of lawful duties of anybody, federal, local, or state authorities. That's not a constitutionally protected act. So what they're doing, and if they fall down and get a boo-boo because they want to chest up to a federal agent or an NYPD person or a local sheriff somewhere or a county constable anywhere, they're going to get what they're going to get. And you know what? Before 2020, before all of this, movement, right? The George Floyd effect, it was acceptable. And people would back up the police and say, well, don't F with the police, right? And that doesn't give the police the right to go out and brutalize people. That's not what we're saying. It's not what we're saying. We're not saying go out there and brutalize people and do everything else, okay? Listen, the feds, when they are doing any kind of crowd control, which we're going to get into in a little bit, they're not bound by this bullshit settlement agreement that our current administration signed the NYPD up into because they want to kowtow to, all the liberals and the woke, politicians. So, like you said, it's just preposterous. And, Lily asks a question here, does the federal agency have more say over local PD? And you brought it up and you mentioned it, right? In the Constitution, it says that federal law trumps local and state law. Okay. Now, everybody wants to talk about sanctuary city laws and everything else. That doesn't apply here. That's not what we're talking about.
No, I mean, could you just imagine that an NYPD officer run up to a federal agent and says, you got to stop affecting this arrest, and I'm placing you under arrest. Well, if I'm the federal agent, you know what I'm doing? Dude, you have two things you can either do. You can either back away and get out of here and shut your mouth, or two, I'm going to lock you up for obstructing and file whatever federal charges I can do against you. I'm taking federal police action. Years ago, there was, and I'm sure it still exists, there was an operations order within the NYPD. And when outside agencies would come into the city, they would have to notify intel. Okay, so oftentimes, let's say Nassau came into the city and they wanted to execute a search warrant within the 5 boroughs. They would call up BSU and say, "Hey, we need you guys to help us do the search warrant." And then they would call me and I would say, "Hold on, we can't do that. We have to send it over to intel to make sure that intel approves it." And remember, they used to do it's called a deck and a tech on the house, decks and techs, to make sure there's no additional investigations, that nobody else is wanted in that place, and make sure they're not impeding on an official investigation. And then only and then would the intel say, "Yeah, you guys have permission." But that's local cooperation, and that's making sure that everything works together. The feds are under no obligation to do that. They have jurisdiction. They have jurisdiction throughout the 50 states. That's federal jurisdiction. And they're there enforcing the laws that they want. Now, if somebody tries to impede them or assault them and they take action and they arrest that person, well, so be it. That's their arrest. And again, I'll go back to the point when you see a police officer, when 2 police officers are effecting arrest, and all of a sudden one police officer says, "Well, that looks like it's an excessive amount of force." You don't see that officer put that other officer in cuffs, right? There are reporting requirements. Okay, so you call IAB or you notify your supervisor, etc. But you don't just make arrests. So this Dan Goldman calling for to effect arrests and enforce city law. You can't do that against our federal partners. Okay, I'm sure there are reporting mechanisms to be done if you felt something was excessive or whatever, but you don't go there and start putting everybody and cuffing everybody. I mean, we don't cuff the demonstrators now that walk all over the city and do whatever the hell they want. You're gonna cuff federal law enforcement? I don't know, man. This is crazy.
And that's exactly what I said to this person was, yeah, listen, if a cop just walks up and just blasts somebody and assaults somebody, yeah, they're going to get collared. But if somebody makes a complaint of excessive force because they felt like they got to push onto their little tush, as I said before,
That's
right?
the quote of the day, they're saying.
It's the quote of the day, right? But if that's what happens and they get an injury or whatever the hell happens from that force and they feel it's excessive or somebody else feels it's excessive, or in New York City, the Civilian Complaint Review Board sees a video on X or a news feed and self-generates a case against that officer, right? Because it's weaponized against the NYPD, even though you have no complainant, then you're going to get a civilian complaint, which will be investigated for internal discipline. You're not getting arrested because police work got a little dirty.
Right. No.
And here's TC.
I like TC. You know what? TC says ESU broke a window to save a child locked in the car. Show me with one under. Yeah, and I'll tell you what. You know what else? Here's another good one. Right? Okay. I haven't heard from my father in a long time. You think you guys could go do a wellness check? Okay, knock on the door. No answer. ESU, could you take the door? Yeah, sure. Take the door. The guy's fine. Hey, I want those ESU guys arrested for burglary. I mean, come on.
It's
come on. It's ridiculous. You're within your scope of your employment. So let's think about that. So
Yeah. Listen, Jeff Smith, tell Gamble federal law supersedes local law. Not that he would care. And that's what I said. Yeah, federal law does supersede law. So, you're talking about the laws, right? What laws is he talking about? Is he talking about felony assault because somebody complained because they were pushed down to the ground, and now he's saying that's a felony assault? He's also mentioning in this article, he talks about in the article, he also mentions that the incidents that are happening inside the federal courthouses, right? Well, once again, you have people like our local politicians, right? Our, local elected, city council members, or Jumaane Williams, the advocate, and who's the other? Oh, Controller Brad Landa. He loves to go and get arrested now at the courthouse because he wants to go there and he wants to stand and he wants to impede in the federal offices making arrests on ICE detainers. Now, again, the NYPD is not going to get involved in that. The NYPD is not going to assist them with ICE detainers, right? That's been determined to this point to be a civil matter that is under the purview of the federal authorities. So the feds are doing their job, even though it's something that is against the sanctuary city statutes in New York City. But again, we talked about that in the past where the sanctuary city statutes have been expanded from their original, thoughts of being in place to avoid immigrants and people that are of non-legal status from receiving medical attention, receiving police services if they're the victim of a crime, and so forth. Now it's, we're not going to get involved. We're not going to notify ICE. We're not going to make all these notifications when someone's involved in criminal activity. And it specifically says in that, in the sanctuary city laws, that criminal investigations are exempt from the sanctuary city protections. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little while. But yeah, federal law supersedes it. And like I said on the last show, I think that this is going to play out in court and it's going to wind up all the way up to the Supreme Court because the federal government and Tom Homan says, it's not just the one statute that they keep citing. There are criminal statutes as well. One of these criminal statutes is, it's 8 U.S. Code 1324, right? Which allows you to criminally prosecute any person, including state or local officials, which we're going to get into again, who violate federal immigration laws or otherwise attempt to obstruct justice. Such persons are not protected by sovereign immunity from federal prosecution. Civil lawsuits can also be filed under the Supremacy Clause, which you mentioned, when state or local laws directly violate federal immigration statutes or impose, quote, an obstacle to the accomplishment and execution of the full purpose and objectives of Congress in federal immigration laws. So that's when, where the conflict is, and it's very difficult to navigate the two. But going out there and thinking that you're going to lock up an NYPD cop is going to lock up somebody from Department of Homeland Security, FBI, Immigration and Naturalization, Immigration Custom Enforcement. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And like you said, now what? Now it's going to be, okay, so you locked up this guy because you think he violated a local law, and now we're going to lock you up because now you're interfering with federal agent doing their job. And, it's going to be this pissing match, this tit for tat back and forth. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's just.
It's going to get ugly fast, real fast. The departments are going to get involved with each other. It's craziness. When does it stop? It's not gonna. Then anything and everything's off the table. But hey, I don't think I would have ever arrested a federal employee for doing their federal job. That's not your jurisdiction, right? So, and you wouldn't expect them to go with you quietly either. So I think there's going to be a big problem. So yeah, and we know that, like, even with internal affairs, right? When they have a C case, a criminal case, they go through all the steps before they arrest anybody. They don't just go there and arrest them and then bring them in. Oh, you used excessive force, and that person, you threw them to the ground. They got an injury, so we're going to charge you with assault too. So we're going to arrest you. No, it goes through the whole process. And here we're just circumventing, or we're actually making up a process. We're not even circumventing a process, because there is no process. And like I said in the beginning of the show, hey, if a federal agent violates a law, a city law, a state law, when they're not in the scope of their employment, then that's understandable. That can be, you could have a domestic violence, right? You could have, a larceny or anything else. Then there's nothing that says we can't effect the arrest of that federal agent. I mean, there are notifications, right? We know there's going to make major notifications, but that doesn't mean we can't, that the arrest not made. But when somebody's working and they're, a sworn duty officer working, you're not going to arrest them. I mean, where does it end? Does the state police, if the state police, right? So you have the diaphragm law, right? So now the diaphragm law is in New York City, right? Okay. So now state police come in and you see them violate that law by placing somebody arrest. Now they are supposed to follow that law within the city of New York, right? Because now they're in that jurisdiction. But let's say they push down on the person's diaphragm. Is an NYPD officer going to place that person, that state trooper, into custody and say you violated the law? I doubt it
right now.
Well, Dan Goldman is Dan Goldman Sachs, right? So where's he coming from? Huh? A little bit of wealth and money, I would assume, but crazy.
Yeah,
hey, yeah. That's the other thing. Hold on. Do you charge him? Do you make a gun collar then?
Right. That's what somebody said before. Does this count as a gun collar?
Yeah, it counts.
Yeah, because we're licensed to carry a firearm, but once you carry that firearm in the commission of a crime, your license is null and it becomes criminal possession of a firearm.
Yeah.
Right? Like a cop. If a cop is off duty and they menace somebody with their firearm, they're charged with criminal possession of a firearm, even though they're legally, allowed to carry that firearm. Once they use it in an unlawful manner, they could be charged with that. So yeah.
I noticed Marlon mentioned something about Port Authority. Now, I don't know if this in reference to that, but I remember with the Port Authority, there was something with they have a dual jurisdiction, right? They have New Jersey and New York. And because of the stringent laws in New York about search and seizure, I remember talking to Port Authority cops on the George Washington Bridge that they wouldn't necessarily stop the person until they crossed over into Jersey, because then the search and seizure laws were a little bit more lax, and they could affect that arrest by doing that search and seizure. So it's what it's crazy. Who are we locking up? We're locking everybody up.
Listen, it's difficult, and listen, Operation Breadbasket, I'm gonna just ask you one more time to just slow down with the comments. You say there's nothing I can do about it. I don't want to put you in a timeout. I want you to enjoy the show. I want you to enjoy the chat, but please give other people an opportunity to get involved with the show. We do, you say I don't have to read all the comments. We do read the comments because part of this show is the engagement with our audience. So, I'm not saying that you're saying anything so bad. I'm just saying you're spamming it. I'm saying that you're spamming it and you're taking up a lot of the space and you're taking up a lot of the time in there. Okay. So, okay, 1804. We'll see. So yeah. And again, like we said, part of what he's talking about is the incidents that are happening inside the courtroom, right? And we've talked about it in the past, and we mentioned it just before. You know, you have Brad Lander, you have Jamani Williams, who was out on Canal Street last night. You have them, Brad Lander again last night, all of this stuff going into the courthouses and obstructing the ICE agents from placing illegal aliens into custody on detainer warrants. So that's something that has been an issue. And today, actually, there was an article that came up about a judge who ordered ICE agent arrested at courthouses if they come in to effect arrests without a warrant. You want to get into that one?
Yeah, I mean, you got this U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Cummings. He literally orders ICE officers that they're banned from arresting migrants at the courthouse if they don't have a warrant. So the judge was aimed to prevent that, what he called was collateral arrests. I mean, that's what ICE has been doing all along. I mean, I don't necessarily see the problem with this. You know, says these migrants that ICE agents come across by happenstance. Well, I don't necessarily believe that, but and he wants them to have like an arrest warrant for them. But I don't think they come by happenstance. I mean, there's a notification that when arrests are made. I mean, and if they violate, you know, immigration laws, okay, then why can't they ICE agents effectively enforce that immigration law? That's their job. And in my opinion, the U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Cummings, I think it's in Cook County in Illinois, he has jurisdiction within his courtroom, right? He sits on that bench. That's his courtroom. He can control that courtroom. When things are done outside, right, outside the courthouse or in the halls of the courthouse, as far as I'm concerned, that's not his jurisdiction, right? So I think you should be able to effect these arrests, and why not? What is that? I mean, and specifically if somebody that violates immigration law and is, let's say he's arrested or she's arrested, and then they're released, because I'm sure Jeffrey Cummings isn't remanding anybody, but they're released and that person walks outside and walks to the front of the courthouse and the ICE agents are there and he's arrested, so be it. I mean, that's it. So I also think this district judge, Jeffrey Cummings from Cook County, is overstepping his bounds as well. I mean, you know, where does it end? You know, everybody's trying to do all these lawsuits. Everybody's making these rules. Let's follow the law of the land.
No, I agree with you 100%. And, you know, like you said, and Samara was saying, hampering arrests at courthouses, how does this, in the interest of justice, interfering with an arrest anywhere, I don't believe, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, and that's the thing, is some of these things make absolutely no sense. From the beginning of time, you know, a good cop is going to make, you know, the easiest collar they can make, right? If you got to go out and you got to arrest. So you have federal agents that have a list of hundreds of thousands of documented illegals that were actually documented, you know, as they came across illegally and were allowed to just continue on their way. And then were given, you know, a bus ride and a bus ticket and a 4-star hotel and debit cards and free meals and medical, cell phones so they can call back to their country, and all of this. And now they don't show up, whatever the case may be, or they're identified as coming across, and now they have detainers put on them, right? Well, when you have a court appearance, it's a public record. And whenever the squad was looking for somebody, right? And they were a suspect, it's the first thing, you get notified, hey, they got a court date on this day. What do? It's the easiest way to find them. I know they're going to be in court. So you show up at the courthouse and you lock them up on an ICE detainer. Now, there's a difference between an ICE detainer and a judicial warrant. Judicial warrant is what this judge is saying. If you don't have a judicial warrant, then he's not allowing you to take anyone into custody without a judicial warrant. I believe the judicial warrants are for those illegal immigrants who have committed crimes in this country, and they've gotten a judge to sign off on a judicial warrant, as opposed to what they are calling more civil and administrative ICE detainers, where they're gonna take them into their custody and they're gonna deport them, right? So, but listen, that's once again, that falls under the authority of these federal agents. We, as the NYPD, I'll still say we, right? But as the NYPD and anyone else in any other sanctuary blue city in this country, is not going to hold anybody on an ICE detainer. They're not going to notify ICE that they have them in custody for another charge, right? Unless they're convicted of certain crimes, right? So the feds are doing their job. So now you're saying that if you come into my courthouse, not my courtroom, my courthouse, that you're going to be arrested again for doing your job. Okay? Which is, it just makes no sense. And judges have been arrested for harboring and sneaking out illegal immigrants through the back doors of the courthouse, knowing that there were ICE or federal agents waiting in the hallway to take that person into custody once they left the courtroom. And they've been charged federally. That's why it says in the code, right? Once again, that, such persons are not protected by sovereign immunity from federal prosecution. Just because you are a state or local official, such as a judge or a cop or something like that, if you're going to interfere with the operations of this ICE agent, you're subject to arrest. Now you're going to say, I'm going to arrest you for doing your job. Blows my mind.
I'll say one thing else too. You know what? Wouldn't you rather have that individual taken into custody by ICE at that point, that that the person's not armed, nobody else is around that's going to be injured? Okay, it's not going to turn into a hostage job. It's not going to turn into a person barricaded with a gun or anything else. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to take this person into custody and answer for the charges that they're being charged with. I mean, this is the perfect place. And like you said, that's what the squads did, right? They'd go to the courtroom and they'd sit in the thing and wait and see what happened.
Well, wait outside for them to walk out the front door and smoke that cigarette as soon as they get out of court. They stop, they light up.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, Ron, come here for a second.
Yeah.
You
got a ride for you.
Today, right?
Yeah.
So Samara is asking, a courthouse of sanctuaries now? Well, funny you say that, because the Homeland Security response to this judge, right? They defended its practice of arresting illegal aliens at courthouses. We are in some medieval kingdom. There are no legal sanctuaries where you can hide and avoid the consequences for breaking the law, DHS said in a statement to CBS News. Nothing in the Constitution prohibits arresting a lawbreaker wherever you find them. I mean, that's pretty simple right there, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's right down to the point, I think, and you're right. So, right? Didn't they used to, if somebody was in jail, right? Let's say they were in Rikers and they were found to commit a crime and whatever, they would rearrest them in Rikers, right? So I mean, yeah. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want that? I mean, it's to me, it's a safe place. It's safe for the individual. It's safe for the officers there. I think it's not a bad idea at all. And well, first of all, what's that person being arrested for? Why you're answering or something? So it really, come on.
They're being arrested because they broke the law by coming into this country.
Yeah.
There are legal ways to come into this country.
Yeah, and even after you're in, there's legal ways to apply or there's legal ways to go back to your country and then come back in the right way. So yeah, I don't think the judge has any right to do this. I think it's political in nature, and again, are these everything being done to just get clicks, to get notoriety? I don't know. I mean, their feeling is it, or the should we call the feeling police, because their feelings are hurt because somebody was arrested? They're not. Their job is to okay. A judge's job is to listen to the evidence and decide criminality or innocence. It's not to suddenly become, I'm gonna freedom. I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna give you that. No, that's not your job. So just to do that in his own courtroom. Hey, like I said, he owns the courtroom. Actions that happen in his courtroom are his, right? That's why you all rise when the judge comes in the courtroom. But he walks out the door, game on.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So you're saying now, as a judge, that I'm gonna be able to say you can't come into my courthouse or the whole court building and arrest anybody that's wanted for a federal crime, just because the locals aren't going to arrest them, like we said.
When does he become in charge of the whole building? Of
course, there's imagine Rob getting called to take a door to arrest ICE.
Yeah, imagine. That would be crazy.
Yeah, it's I just listen. It's just it's somebody said it here before. It's bizarro world. Oh, it's right there, hardcore, right? It's right in front of me. Yep. Bizarro world. It's the truth. I don't get it. It's radical left-wing judges appear to be overstepping their bounds, seemingly more focused on self-promotion than impartial justice. I don't even know if it's self-promotion. It's it's an Obama-appointed judge. Under this administration, he's not moving up anywhere. He's just, flexing his muscle as the judge. And I don't think giving lawful decisions from the bench. And I think that decision will be challenged by the Secretary of Homeland Security. And I don't think it'll stand up. Now, I don't know if they'll challenge it by sending somebody into his courtroom. I wouldn't doubt that from this administration either. Like, go ahead, try and lock me up, but I don't know.
I would love to see if there was a way to get better information. Is this judge, because he was a Obama appointee, right? So man, Obama's pretty still actively involved in the party, in his Democrat Party. Probably I would call the leader of the Democrat Party. Because there's really not many other leaders. I can't say AOC is a leader. I can't say Chuck Schumer is a leader. So I'm thinking behind the doors, Obama's still leading. And I often wonder, maybe there is things behind door that he's getting, whether it's, I don't know. I don't know if that's an elected position. So is he getting, because some of the judges are elected, right? So I know he was appointed, but is he now filtering to other judges? Hey, you did the right thing for me, and you did the right thing by standing up to the Trump administration. Are there other things that are happening behind closed doors that we're not aware of? So, I mean, I would warrant an investigation, because to me, that judge is outside of the bounds of his, his authority to really be saying this.
And that's to Samara's point, right? Samara Cohen. A part of the Finest Unfiltered, always follow and appreciate the support. Is the judge subject to judicial review? All judges are. And it used to be that judges didn't want to make decisions on the bench that would ever get overturned, because it's like a strike against them, right? Or even it's like an ego blow. That means I was wrong. That means I was wrong. If my decision gets overturned, then I didn't make a just decision. I don't think they care anymore.
Nah.
They're making their decisions. They're making their points, kind of knowing it's going to get thrown out, But now he's got, look, now, now everybody knows what he looks like, right? There he is, It's bizarro world.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And Eric is welcoming you to the club.
Oh, you got that, huh? Yeah.
You're in. Somebody else commented earlier on it.
They asked me if I had it. They asked me if you gave me permission to grow a beard. I said I got a note. So
you got the note.
I got the note.
All right. Well, anything else on this before we move on?
No, I like I said, it's very bizarre, and if I was a police officer in the street and somebody told me to, arrest that federal agent, I would, if I'm getting an order from a chief or some other idiot that in the department that thinks I could do it, I'd be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to refuse it, and then I'll fight it. I'll fight the case, because to me it's not right. It's not to me. It's not a lawful order, right? I would quote this. Hey, chief, is a supremacy clause in the United States Constitution. You might want to read that before you order me to arrest some federal agent for what you're deeming as a state or city violation. So before you do that, why don't you look at that first? Then you can suspend me, because I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
I know that sounds like a tough. But that's what you got to be. You have to be tough once in a while, because some of these idiots out there that are running the job, they don't know what they're doing. So they're going to say that. They're going to see this. Oh, we can do that now. Let's do it. Let's do it. No, that's not what we do. Okay, we follow the law, and that's the most important thing as a police officer, is to follow the law. But that's my rant for now. I don't want to be angry, Rob, but it's pissing me off.
Well, Angry Ron's been around the last couple of weeks, right?
That's all right.
Angry Ron might come back a little later too, but we'll see. Eric is saying that you have a face only a mother could love.
That is true. That is true.
And your wife. And
my wife. I don't know if my wife loves me, but
Oh, come on, she does.
All right.
He said. TC says you get razor bumps.
I do.
Oh. And he wants to know where mine is. Yeah. No.
Come on,
all right.
You can do it.
So, as we talked about, and we mentioned at the beginning of the show at the opening yesterday, there was an incident. ICE was conducting raids. It wasn't just ICE. It was the Department of Homeland Security. It was the FBI, and it was Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Were conducting raids on Chinatown's Canal Street, and multiple people were detained as New Yorkers raged. So that is what's going on, right? So everybody knows, what happens down on Canal Street, right? People go, they buy their fake Rolexes, they buy their fake purses, they buy their Louis Vuittons, and their, all this other stuff, and they go, and it's been a bane of the existence of the people of Chinatown, the merchants that sell the true products. It's actually a federal crime, and it's a felony of trademark counterfeiting and transporting these goods over state lines and things like that. So, I dealt with it when I was the CO of the 110 precinct. I dealt with it when I was at the patrol bureau, and it's a big complaint that you get that gets addressed. Now, the feds went in and they were working a criminal case. Now, again, here we talked about earlier the difference between doing a immigration roundup that they call them, right? That everybody that the left calls it, an immigration roundup, where they go and they effect arrests of people that are in this country illegally that have arrest detainers on them, and they take them into custody and they say bye-bye to this country. That's the way that they're supposed to operate. That's their job. That's their job description. And they're acting under the authority of the federal government, the Constitution, and the United States Congress. So now they come out and they're conducting an investigation into these stolen and counterfeit goods. And all hell breaks loose. And crowds gather and they start swarming the ICE agents, interfering with their operation, interfering with their vehicles, interfering with their movement. And everybody is all up in arms that these federal police officers are doing their job. So what did you think when you saw that right away?
Well, I tell you, you talked about a chaotic scene. When I was a cop, I was in NSU 9. I had a foot post up on Fordham Road, which bordered the 4-6 and 5-2, and there were a lot of people that would set up, their blankets and sell illegal stuff up there, right? Counterfeit stuff. And what happens is if you said, oh, the sergeant came by with the van and said, hey, we're going to do some enforcement, and say, all right. So you'd grab the first guy, right? And there would be a stampede of everybody grabbing their blankets and all their counterfeit stuff and taking off down the block. Like, it was crazy. It was crazy. And
they still do it. They still do it.
They still run crazy. And I think it was TC that said you had a voucher, all those, you're counting all this stuff and vouchering all these, T-shirts or whatever the case may be. It was a nightmare. But when you talk about chaos, the chaos starts as soon as you start taking the first person and saying you're under arrest for whatever, trademark counterfeiting or illegal peddling or whatever the case may be. And then we used to get smart at the end of it. We used to put another van down the other end of the block. And then when they all ran down there with their shopping carts or their little red basket, the little red wagons with all their stuff in it, then they'd get stopped at the end of the block. But geez, we talk about chaos. Chaos begins the minute that starts.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can only imagine.
100%, 100%. And hardcore. It's funny that you ask if Kaz was there with his crew, because as Rob is talking about the peddler enforcement he did, I did peddler enforcement as well. Went out there, and when I was a cop in the 7-0, we used to do it on Flatbush Avenue, Church Avenue, all the time. Same thing, exactly what you're saying. The reason that they're on blankets is so that they can grab the corners and they can run, throw it over their back like a Santa sack and run, and it's 100% what they do. And you got to jockey, and you got to, like you said, now, all right, next time we're going to do it differently. And next time we're going to cut them off. We're going to let them run into us, whatever the case may be. But it's something that goes on, and it's a community complaint that the NYPD has been addressing forever. And you talk about Kaz and the video crew. So now we're going to look. I put a little compilation together, and there's so many. There's news reports touting what the NYPD is doing, saying how great it is. There's a million videos that he put out there. We don't have enough time. So I just took a couple and I put them together. So let's see what the NYPD, right, has been doing. And mind you, we're in, what are we, the third week of October? And these things were happening only a few weeks ago. These aren't old posts. I didn't take something. This is Deputy Mayor of Public Safety, Kaz Daughtry, and the NYPD and the sheriffs and the sanitation department out doing police work.
So right now we're at Canal Street. You got the Sheriff's Department. You got the NYPD. You can't even walk down the street. When visitors come to New York City, we want them to buy authentic stuff, not counterfeit fake stuff. Like I said before, we're not going to have a city of lawlessness here. What you see here is an operation being done by the NYPD in connection with the Sheriff's Department, the Department of Sanitation, and as well as DWCP. And they're going to be out here every single day doing this operation. As you can see, the sidewalks are nice and clean now. Like I said before, we want our visitors, our New Yorkers, our tourists to come and visit an authentic shop. Go visit a regular Nike store. Go visit a regular Gucci store. Stop buying this bogus stuff out here.
You love it outside. We outside. Go ahead, Dad. I see you, Dad.
We got Louis. Gucci, nah, it's not that. It's a Supreme, man. You gotta get Supreme wallets, bro. That's where the money's at, bro.
Right now, outside, but on the corner of Broadway and Canal, and I just observed the NYPD along with the sheriffs. They were out here taking some of the illegal vendors. Big vending operation going on right here. So far, I was told they got 7 arrests. I was just over here with the Deputy Mayor for Administration, Camille Joseph Varlak, was out here, and we observing the good work that the officers were doing. On the corner of Broadway and Canal, and just down Canal Street, you can't even walk down the sidewalk because these vendors are just taking over the sidewalk. People are tired of it. They want their quality of life back. They want their sidewalk back. It's almost kind of like they set it up where people are getting funneled into a little space where they have to like walk by all of these vendors out here in the street. You got blankets set up here. You got all of this fake stuff that they're selling. Shout out to the NYPD. They're out here every day enforcing the vending rules and regulation out here. As you can see from the truck, the NYPD is doing a great job. They got truckloads of merchandise and counterfeit stuff that they have taken from here, and they're going to continue to do it. Thank you so much to the NYPD. Thank you to the Sheriff's Department for coming here, doing the vehicle enforcement. And thank you to all the agencies that are involved in this operation and helping restore the quality of life back to New Yorkers, especially here on Canal Street. Thank you.
Pretty good work, right? You're muted.
2 things. Marlon. 2 things. I think first, all the ICE agents, you know, when they put the mask up on the face, they wear the face masks and stuff. They should have a picture of Kaz, like for the face mask, because then they won't have any problems. This way, it looks like Kaz is doing it, because when Kaz does it, it's okay, right? And then the other thing is, I think TC said it at 1805. I don't know if you caught it, but he said something about Kaz giving out gifts at the Christmas party. I would be more concerned if I was Kaz's girlfriend to make sure that Louis Vuitton bag is a real Louis Vuitton bag and not something that may have been vouched. So I don't know.
Listen, what I notice in the video, right, is that the streets are wide open. That the streets aren't being blocked.
No.
That the NYPD trucks full of all of the illegal vendors' equipment and the van with the 7 bodies in it from the arrests, right, for illegal vending and trademark counterfeiting were freely driving away down the street. The sidewalks were free and clear of debris, vendors, and protesters.
No protesters.
No protesters. Great job, NYPD. Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7. I could have put up all the news reports of Kaz and Shell and everybody else going on and saying how great the job of the quality of life teams are doing and everything else. And I don't disagree that they are doing a good job, that is an important task that needs to be done for as far as quality of life. But now when the federal authorities, who are law enforcement agents who were conducting a criminal investigation, not doing a sweep as they talked about, go out and do the same thing, oh, they're the villains. They're the end of the world, right? They're not praising their actions. Let's see what the news has to say on what happened last night.
Federal agents wearing ICE, Homeland Security, and FBI vests swarming Lower Manhattan's popular Canal Street shopping area. Frisking and detaining at least a half dozen men, pushing some into a van as our cameras were rolling.
You got people out here locking people up for no reason. I'm born here.
One person briefly handcuffed before being released.
They asked me for ID. I didn't show them no ID. They cuffed me. That was it.
Overnight, city officials responding.
Street vendors are not a national security threat. We want ICE out of New York City.
DHS telling NBC News in a statement that the operation focused on criminal activity relating to selling counterfeit goods, saying that as it was going on, people were, quote, shouting obscenities, became violent, and obstructed law enforcement duties. All of it coming days after a series of social media posts from a conservative influencer flagging ICE to this very street, known for sidewalk vendors selling counterfeit merchandise. Tensions also rising outside a nearby federal immigration court as anti-ICE protesters gathered. Tensions have been growing between ICE and some communities across the country in recent months.
So what they're failing to talk about is what really happened down on Canal Street. They're talking about 26 Federal Plaza. They're saying that there was protesters showed up at 26 Federal Plaza. That's not an honest depiction of what happened yesterday, right? They were swamped at Broadway and Canal. I want to know, how did the protesters get there so fast? How were they mobilized to get there so fast? Right? And then the NYPD, and I didn't cut this out, and at the time, puts out an X post, right? The NYPD was not involved in the operation on Canal Street. They wanted to make it free and clear that they had nothing to do with that. When in fact, even though it's a sanctuary city, they could have been involved because it was a criminal investigation, which is an exception to the sanctuary city laws.
Also, the fact that they're helping out the citizens of New York by enforcing those peddlers and that counterfeit trademark, right? So any of those establishments that are on Canal Street that actually sells a Giant or a Jet jersey, okay, that you want to buy. You come from Oshkosh, Iowa, and you come here and you say, hey, I think I want to buy a Giant jersey or a Jet jersey. Let me go in this store, or even a I Love New York shirt because I came here and visited. So now what do? I look at the street vendor and he says $5. You go in the store, they want $15. Okay, I'm gonna get the $5 one. But you just screwed the person that owns that store that's selling for $15. And you know what? I guarantee you're getting better quality from the one that's selling for $15 than some $5 thing that's probably just had a quick silk screen on it, and the first time you wash it, it's going to fall apart. So they're helping out the business owners. They're helping out the people of the community. They're making that street walkable again, right? You're able to traverse down that street. So it has all the implications of helping out the city of New York, the citizens of New York, but these morons still protest and yell and scream. Yet when the NYPD does it, then they're praised. So they're just picking on somebody that's wearing an ICE jacket. They're just doing that, for their clicks or whatever, or who knows if they're getting paid for it. Hey, we found these ICE agents and we demonstrated against them. We blocked them. Now give me my $45 an hour or whatever. So, but the whole thing is ridiculous, and it definitely it illustrates how stupid these demonstrators are. That they weren't doing ICE enforcement. But I guarantee you though, by asking ID, if somebody was an illegal immigrant, then they would have taken it the next step, and that's within their purview. That's within their jurisdiction to do, right? But if this individual said, "Oh, I had ID." But I didn't. I told him I didn't have it, and then he never said he proved who he was and was released, right? Which I probably was. But hey, all right, so you got a ticket or whatever, and you moved on.
Or we don't even know if they stopped him because they thought he was one of the vendors, did an investigation, and released him.
Right, and he wasn't, right.
And he wasn't part of the vendors. You know, maybe originally he was stopped, and maybe he was just going to buy something.
Yeah.
But he was stopped because he was under suspicion of a felony of trademark counterfeiting, and it winds up that he's not the case. So Operation Breadbasket's asking, you know, who saw that video of the guy aggressively telling the other guy not to video him over there on Canal when they were selling? I did. It was actually too long for me to cut into the video or to bring on, because we have a lot of stuff to try and get through today, and we kind of want to hard out so that everybody can get a chance to watch the debate at 7 o'clock. And it was a long video, and yeah, it was a violent confrontation of one of the vendors who there was a independent reporter down on Canal Street. He had a photographer, and the guy was saying, "You can't be on our block. This is our block." And he was chasing him, and he was swatting him. He winds up punching the photographer in the face, knocking the camera down, and everything else. And the other influencer that they were talking about was also down on Canal Street, videotaping all of this and saying that these are, you know, immigrants and illegal immigrants, and they're out here selling fake goods, peddling fake goods, and taking up the whole sidewalk and being violent with people, which was confirmed by this other video that Breadbasket's talking about. So yeah, absolutely true. And when the NYPD's out there doing it, it's all praise to Kaz, to the Q teams, to the sheriff's office, to the sanitation department for cleaning up this area and allowing everybody, like you said, to now walk freely and not be accosted as they're walking down the street, right? Canal Street is famous. It's famous for shops and everything else. It's also famous for getting your bogus goods. But that doesn't make it legal and doesn't make it right.
No, and what law enforcement officer, I don't care, federal, state, or anywhere else, you're not going to act on a tip, right? You get a tip that certain things are going on, you're going to act on them. I mean, that's the whole idea of the 311. That's the whole idea of, you know, the tips hotline. That's the whole idea. See something, say something. Hey, if a law enforcement entity gets information, they're going to act on it. And that's what these ICE agents and these federal officers did. So, I mean, let's, I think, I mean, I'm happy that they did their job. They did it. You know, I didn't see anything wrong with what they were doing.
Let's take a look from another view, though, because AM New York is the one that reported this, right? They also had a video embedded in their story. And let's take a look just from a different view. Again, the Good Day New York had that first clip I just showed, right? That we just showed. And they saying how the protest happened outside of the 26 Federal Plaza, which is the federal building, right? The federal courthouse where ICE has their offices and everything else. Well, there's been daily protests there, right? And somebody asked, I'm not sure if it was hardcore, somebody asked, I didn't see the NYPD in any of that video. It was brought up on today's show when John and Eric and, you know, talked about it. I don't know if they talked about it today. They might have, because I know they had an interview today. And I was driving, so I didn't catch every minute of it. But it's 100%. 100%. Now, when they're doing their operation and you don't see the NYPD, okay, they're not cooperating in the thing. And they may not have even notified the NYPD and requested any assistance in that operation. They're conducting their own federal investigation into criminal activity of trademark counterfeiting and selling stolen goods, right? So that I have no problem with. But once they have this encounter and the crowd starts to form and Canal Street starts to get blocked off and Broadway starts to get blocked off with traffic, I'm sure that they called for local law enforcement assistance. I'm sure 911 calls were made. And I don't see a cop anywhere. I don't see an NYPD cop anywhere. So it calls to question, what were directions given to the rank and file? Oof. Right? We just talked about what happened in Chicago last week.
Yep.
Did that just happen here? We talked about it possibly coming here with the next administration. We didn't think it was going to happen with this administration, even though, if Mandami or Cuomo gets in, is the administration any different than this current administration? It's only going to get worse. But where is the NYPD? And now let's take a look at this video, and I'll pose the same question. Anything before we get into to show this one?
No, let's see what the video.
They're being chased. It's like it's like I feel like it's like Black Hawk Down, and they're trying to exfil out, right? And they're trying to retreat. They couldn't even get back in their vehicles because their vehicles were being blocked. So now they're walking on foot from Canal and Broadway back to 26 Federal Plaza and trying to get back there safely when they're being mobbed. And there's a mob chasing them pretty much. Just because they're walking doesn't mean they're being chased. And there's other videos of physical altercations of them blocking the vehicles in the street. And then the one girl gets the push down onto her tush, right?
Oh, 3 times, right? I think. That's 3. Hashtag 3 on that.
And, it's ridiculous. I forgot to take that down. But, it just, I don't see the NYPD anywhere there. And that concerns me to no end.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they, were requested, right? So we don't know if they were actually requested, but if they were and they didn't show up, I mean, we talked about, that chief, right, in Chicago, that the chief of patrol where he told everybody to stand down or whatever, not respond. And then you see in other law enforcement, I think it was in Florida where they told them, if you follow a federal agent, and especially a mob like that, presumed engagement is that they're going to try to hurt the officer or do something wrong. So, I mean, there's nothing saying that they can't take, appropriate action. Now, clearly, somebody either pushed or shoved, and the officers took action and placed somebody under arrest, and then that's fine. That's what they're supposed to do. But walking like that without a vehicle, it's dangerous. I don't know if I necessarily would have done that, but I would have probably got them back into the vehicle, and then you can call for help. But again, like you said earlier, hopefully with the city of New York, that you're going to have officers that respond, and that order isn't going to be to stand down and not respond. So I think their actions were appropriate. I think that, there people are following them. That's threatening. Okay. Here's the thing, just because NYPD officers, we see it all the time where they get in their face, they start pointing at them, they, shoving cookies in their face and stuff like that. That doesn't mean it's right. Right. You and I were supposed to both talk, right? An arm's length away. You come within an arm's length of me, then you're in my space, and that's dangerous because I have a firearm, right? Like we said like months ago on the podcast, I think John McCarry says it. You come after me, it's a gun run, right? Every time I go into a job, it's a gun run because I have a gun. And if that gun's taken from me, guess what? Now you have, if I'm overpowered by 3 mutts, right? AKA bad people. I think somebody asked earlier the other podcast, what's a mutt? It was yesterday on 10 Fort Tavern with Chief Bobby Voice. That was a great podcast. Love the guy. I knew him when he was a captain in the Bronx. Outstanding man. Always, dead on. But he used the word mutt, and then somebody in the chat said, "What's a mutt?" Mutt's a bad guy. Mutt's an idiot, right? So if 3 mutts come and they cost me and they take my firearm, guess what? Now it's a gun run. So you don't let that happen. You don't let that people come. And if those ICE agents did that, kudos to them, because I firmly believe that even the NYPD officers should be doing that. And if NYPD officers didn't respond to that call, shame on them. Again, I call that. I think it's not a lawful order. And what the CTC says, Rob, please don't use mutt. We use civilized mope, please. And years ago, there was a mope. Remember that? The guy they would ask, what was he arrested for? And the sergeant go, what was he arrested for? Mopery in the 3rd degree, Sarge.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, Marlon said, imagine being stuck in that traffic.
Yeah,
like trying to get to work or trying to get home from work. Right. So you don't think people are calling 911? That there's crowds in the street? You don't think those federal officers were calling for local law enforcement help? That they were calling for the NYPD to help them? I can't imagine that to be the case. And this went on. This went on for a while. And then there was a level 1 mobilization called, and SRG responded to 26 Federal Plaza once they got back in behind the gate, right?
Right.
So, hey, once they made it to the embassy, they were safe, and now they're calling in for, the Marines to safeguard the perimeter.
Benghazi, like you said earlier.
But they had to fight their way back.
And somebody questioned about tactics. I totally agree that, walking on that street like that, solo, surrounded by a crowd, we saw that. I mean, didn't we see that a couple months ago with SRG, or somebody had that one prisoner and he's walking them down the street all by themselves and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, that I definitely, somebody mentioned in the chat, I totally agree that's very bad tactics. You don't want to do that,
And Tamara said professional protesters. That's what I brought up. How did they get there so fast? They weren't at 26 Federal Plaza. There was no protest prior to that operation on Canal Street. There wasn't an active protest, and they redeployed their resources, which they do, because they're very well coordinated, right? And they do redeploy from location to location, right? That didn't happen. This was a pop-up demonstration. I'm sorry, it's not. They all of a sudden had signs. They all of a sudden were all there together, wearing masks and chanting, "ICE must go, ICE must go."
Yeah.
Something's wrong. There was a leak somewhere, or it's that tracking app where they're tracking all, somebody noticed them and put it over on the tracking app. Or again, like I said, maybe there was a leak that they were going to go out and do this operation. Somebody on the inside, which is quite possible. But the lack of an NYPD response is so troubling. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. Like I said, there's no excuse for it. If there wasn't a response, there's no excuse. So, and you know what? You're probably right when you say that. They're walking down the block. I can't tell you how many times you would be wrestling with some mope. CC wants me to say mope, so wrestling with some mope, and you didn't have the time to call 911, call the radio dispatcher. Somebody would call 911 and say, "Hey, there's an officer needs assistance." So I wouldn't be surprised that somebody wouldn't have called that and said, "Hey, there's a bunch of people chasing down ICE." So I mean, I'd love to know if that in fact was, but if the response to the NYPD was slow or not as quick as it should have been, then there should be something wrong there. So, right. I mean, just real quick, just with the tactics. I know Eric's saying spot on, Rob. So I got a spot on. I'm just saying, Ron.
I got one before.
All right, so we're even. Thanks, Eric. Tactics are important. You're bringing that gun to the encounter. Absolutely. It wouldn't have been bad for them to regroup, to go in a store or something or whatever, or go back to their vehicles. I think walking down that block like that and having all those people around you, definitely poor tactics. You're putting yourself in harm's way, and you're going to come to a point where I think you might have to use that weapon, right? Yeah. Somebody grabs it from you and you start wrestling for it. Somebody's going to get hurt. So you got to protect yourself, got to protect that weapon, and you got to protect the people.
And remember that the feds have different rules of engagement.
Yeah.
The feds have different rules of engagement. There was a federal prosecutor that just came out on X responding to someone's comments because the federal agents shot at a vehicle that was trying to run them down. And they said that, police agencies across the country pretty much say that you can't shoot at a moving vehicle unless something other than the moving vehicle is being used against you as far as deadly physical force. And the NYPD policy is such that, other deadly physical force must be used other than the vehicle, with the exception of, the new terroristic exception of when the vehicle might be used for mass casualties, right? Then like what happened in downtown Manhattan a few years ago.
Yeah.
But that's not the case with the federal government. That's a department policy. A motor vehicle is a deadly weapon. Any weapon that can cause serious physical injury or death is a deadly weapon or a dangerous instrument. So you are covered under the law. You might be violating a department policy. And this federal prosecutor said, you're wrong. If someone's trying to kill you with a car, you have the right to use deadly physical force against the person operating that motor vehicle. So people have to remember that. And Breadbasket is saying now, Chris Cuomo was talking about protesting and how people have the right to do so, but it's getting out of hand. Again, you have the right to peaceably protest. You do not have the right to obstruct the movement of major arteries in the city like Broadway. You don't have that right. You don't have the right to physically impede a law enforcement officer in the performance of their duties. If you want to stand there and you want to call them names and say, ICE must go, and hold up your phone and hold up your toilet paper sign and do everything else, you have that right. But to physically impede is not protesting. It is rioting.
Hey, we used to train at Floyd Bennett Field when you used to simunitions, and I don't know if you ever been down there, but there's two subway trains down there.
Yes.
Train cars, and we had federal postal police officers that would train with us in tactics. So one of the scenarios was there's a barricaded perp on the train with a gun. So the sun was actually setting, and the perpetrator ran out, and the federal officer ran after him. And all of a sudden, the federal officer just started shooting his gun, the munitions gun. So it was like, all right, time out, index, hold on. We got to find out what's going on. So we asked the federal officer, I said, why did you shoot him? The sun, you can't see what he's got in his hands. He just ran. He goes, well, it's perceived that when I am blinded by something and I can't see, I can shoot that individual. We were flabbergasted because we're like, what?
Wow.
Really? Not here in the city. You would be indicted for, if not, manslaughter, criminal negligent homicide. So we were flabbergasted. But yeah, there's definitely different rules in the federal statutes and stuff. So yeah, I mean, these protesters got to be careful. I mean, it definitely changes the whole, concept of thinking that, oh, I'm going to be, pushed to the sidewalk nicely, or I'm going to be led across the Brooklyn Bridge, nicely. No, there's different rules of engagement, and you have to be very careful with that. So
Yeah.
it was very interesting to learn that.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And the rules of engagement are completely different with different jurisdictions. Operation Breadbasket's asking Eric, where can he watch the X Space? I don't know if Eric answers. You can go over to John D. McCarry's X, and he's the one that's going to be hosting the live. They're actually going to go live now for a pre-show, and then you can actually listen. If you're not able to watch the debate, you can listen to the debate on John's X, John D. McCarry on X, and you can listen to the debate, and then afterwards we'll all be on for a roundtable afterwards. So yeah, I mean, it's just bizarro world.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it is. It's not fair. So, you want to protest? Absolutely. You have the right to protest. You want to shout obscenities? You want to do things? You want to do that? Absolutely. But you don't have any right to impede other people, right? So let's say you impede people going to work, or you impede people that are going to pick up their kids from school, or God forbid you impede a ambulance getting to a call and somebody dies, or you're a fire truck and the fire burns out of control and kills people in a building. That's where the whole thing where they step over the line. They need to follow the law, okay? And like they've said years ago, you would get a permit. And I think Curtis Sliwa said it, right? They used to get a permit. I think he said it at the last debate. You would get a permit. Now they don't even do that. They just arbitrarily march and block. I mean, you talk about, Curtis understands that. He's been on the streets, and you can't just have this total freaking anarchy. And that's what it is. We can march wherever we want. We're going to be led by the community affairs officers and the SRG, Strategic Response Group. The ones that enforce it aren't even close, right? Because of that stupid agreement that's been made. So
Right.
it's
Which is now
ridiculous.
Fully in effect.
Yeah. Craziness.
But in this situation, I believe you could probably bring SRG in this situation, because they're interfering with the law enforcement officers. So crimes are being suspected and being committed. So at that point, the executive in charge can make the call if they have the couillons.
I heard Timmy Boudet was RDOs. That's why.
No, I saw Timmy Boudet. He was out there in a suit, but he still had his bullhorn.
Bullhorn. I think he drives home with that bullhorn. I swear I was on the
first time I saw him without a suit. That's why you know that it wasn't a planned demonstration, because otherwise he would have been suited up and he would have been out there, because he's the demonstration chief.
I could have sworn I was on the LIE and he was yelling, "Get out of the way! I gotta get to work." So
I love Timmy. Oh, it's unbelievable. All right, we're an hour and a half into the podcast. Let's get on there. Let's hit the like, share, and subscribe. Terry Renane, appreciate the reminder. Trying to catch up here. Thanks, Marlon. Smash those likes. There's Terry there. But, so, I mean, we could go on and on and on about this. We want to try and keep it short. We still want to do the Ask the Executive. But it just, the biggest thing that just keeps sticking to me is the blaring to all MOS in the chat, to you, to myself, to Eric, to John, Marlon. No NYPD response. Throughout that whole incident, no NYPD response. I just don't. I'm not going to be able to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, no, it's scary. Years ago, that would have been a major response. So, but very scary. And I hope that, like, the state police, the federal law enforcement, they all know. And here's another issue at hand. I'm not so sure that we share our radio with federal agents. I know that we share with the state police and back and forth. I know we even some of my radios where we would have Nassau County, the local precincts. I think we like you probably did too as the
111.
So
we were able to switch to Nassau 6.
Right. So I mean, I wonder if they have the proper radio. And I don't know if they necessarily would call 911 and say, "Hey, we need assistance," but I mean, they should.
That would work.
They definitely should, and it would work for a couple reasons. One, it's documented, it's recorded, and it's time stamped, right? So then you would have better indication on response. I mean, exactly how it blew up in the face of Chicago on the chief of patrol, right? It was on the radio. It was entered into the sprint, as we would normally call it, right, with the information for the 911 call, and you're able to judge it then. But here, you're not sure, but if in fact there was a call and a response was took them that long of a response, and then they responded to where the safe haven, where the federal offices are at 26 Federal Plaza. Well, then it was what did they really do? They absolutely did nothing.
Yeah.
So.
We have a new listener here. I haven't seen her in the chat before. Aria 2456. She said that an earlier comment was most protesters she's seen have been very respectful. And that's fine. If you're going to have respectful protests, we have no problem with that. Even if you want to be vocal and you want to be vulgar, you have that right. That's not what we're saying. We're not trying to stifle the First Amendment in any way, shape, or form. But again, you have the right to peaceably protest. You don't have the right to impede law enforcement's duties. Whether you agree with what they're doing or not, you want to protest it, you can protest it. You want to stand outside of 26 Federal Plaza, scream and yell, and wave your flag, that's fine. You don't have the right to block them from leaving and going about their duties. You don't have the right to go out onto Broadway and take over the street. That's not your right. And you're saying it's super scary to have ICE with masks. Most people don't even know that they're ICE or someone who bought a costume on Amazon. I think that's kind of a silly statement. I'm sorry. No disrespect meant, but I think that's a silly statement. They know that they are immigration, naturalization enforcement, customs enforcement, the FBI, and Department of Homeland Security. It's clearly stated on their uniforms, and they are clearly doing enforcement. That's why the protesters are following them around.
Well, the masks in general, I mean, I understand why they wear them, because you had mentioned it earlier that they get doxxed. We saw, Supreme Court judges in the last administration have demonstrations in front of their house and be threatened, and the DOJ did nothing about it, right? So now through facial identification, they're able to see who this ICE agent is. They're able to then mirror up with their social media accounts, and then they're able to identify exactly where they live, and then they can go to their house and do things that either protest there, threaten the family, threaten the children. So I understand that it may look scary, but I mean, it's within their right to do that. I don't think there's any particular policy, or they wouldn't be doing that. The other thing is that all the NYPD officers, our information is all out there anyway, right? So, but I don't think that's fair either, right? So we talked about that. So, but you know what? You also see a lot of the demonstrators with masks on. That's scary too, because if I'm a law enforcement and I see a demonstrator with a mask on, carrying a stick or anything else, my first interpretation for that is they're going to do damage or hurt somebody and not be easily identified. So that in itself is scary for me.
I saw a video online the other day of a protester that got arrested for impeding police officers from moving down the street. They took his mask down, which is a safety issue. I have to take that mask down to ensure that you are not secreting any kind of weapons, that you don't have a razor blade in your mouth or any other type of weapons. I have to take that mask down for safety reasons. And he lost it because now he was exposed. And they said, we will put the mask back up. He's like, it's too late now. Everybody saw me. So he said right there that that's the reason he was wearing his mask. He didn't want to be seen. And then Aria is making a statement that Chicago PD got pepper sprayed by ICE and the sergeant made a formal complaint. Listen, anytime that pepper spray is used, members of the service are getting exposed. That's why you see a lot of them now wearing the masks that NYPD doesn't wear. Anytime I was in a tussle with a bunch of cops trying to take somebody into custody and somebody took out the mace, from the old days of the old orange mace that never came out of your clothes, right, to the pepper spray of today, more cops got hit with it than the perp. That's just a part of business, as we call it, right?
Yeah, no, listen, I had an EDP job in a 3-2. The guy was bonkers. He literally went into a couple apartments, terrorized people, then ran up to his apartment. So when we got up there, I had the old black taser. Remember that with the two charges?
Yeah, the big square box.
Before I could discharge that, one of the officers sprayed mace. and it had no effect on the EDP, but I had about 6 cops coughing up everything that they had in their lungs because it was all over us because the back spray and everything else. I mean, that's all part of it. So I just wanted to address a quick comment. I think Michael M. And he brings up a very valid point to me. He's at 1842 hours. He brings up, he says, Rob, nothing happens in Lower Manhattan without the job knowing about it. It's a large operation and no NYPD uniforms in sight. Something stinks about this. The job was quick to post on X that this was not an NYPD operation. You know what? You just, I mean, Ron, you've been saying that, and you know what, Michael M, you brought that to light. Absolutely, 100%. They definitely stepped off. They didn't want anybody to be responsible to go in. You know, any of our NYPD officers. Michael, I think that's a great point, and I appreciate your comment. As Eric would say, you're spot on.
There you go. And Operation Breadbasket, you weren't being threatened to be put in a timeout for exercising your First Amendment right. You were spamming the chat. Now your comments are on point and topical in the conversation. I have no problem with it. That's why I'm bringing them up and I'm reading them when they're pertinent. So it's not a matter of exercising your First Amendment right. It's a matter of spamming it. So, all right. It's an hour and 40 minutes in. We got 20 minutes away from being in the
debate.
The debate coming on. So we want to do one more quick thing before we did a quick, and it's going to be quick, Ask an Executive segment tonight. So a quick answer to that, no, I don't. Operation Breadbasket. I would have brought it up later, but let me just answer now. I don't think he's going to jump back in. Let me get rid of that so I can bring the video up. So a post comes out from Kristi Noem because the Ninth Circuit Courts of Appeal, U.S. Court of Appeal, Ninth Circuit came out with a ruling. And she says, another victory for President Trump and the safety and security of American people. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled that POTUS, President of the United States, for those who don't know, is rightfully using his constitutional authority to direct the National Guard to protect federal assets, personnel, and public safety in Portland, Oregon. The law, U.S. Constitution, and Supremacy Clause back the president's action to protect the public and law enforcement, and today's ruling has vindicated us. So just quickly, again, we've talked about this in the past. Should the National Guard be deployed into cities to do police work? And I think we both agreed that they shouldn't. If I remember your point.
Shouldn't or should?
Should not.
To do police work.
Do police work.
Right.
Correct. They're not trained for police work. They're not, but to secure federal facilities and protect federal agents, 100%. The problem is that the problem has expanded. So the point of them protecting federal agents, agencies, and buildings is one thing from protesters and being burned to the ground like the police station, right? But now, as we just showed in this video, federal agents need protection. They're not getting the protection of local law enforcement, as we've seen in Chicago, and now we've seen in New York City. And again, we don't have any evidence. We don't have any allegations that they were told to stand down. Nobody has come forward and said that we were told to stand down. No radio transmissions or memos or rumors have leaked out and said that anyone was told to stand down. We just find it, those of us here speaking and those in the chat, just find it mind-boggling that there was no police anywhere to be found during this protracted engagement, you know? So what did you think when you first saw that?
No, I saw that, and I felt it was appropriate. Listen, these are federal buildings. These are federal, police officers, and they have a right to be protected, right? So if the National Guard is almost, to me, similar to SRG, I would say like they're a force multiplier. And if you don't have, while some people are effectively doing their job, you need somebody on the perimeter. So I'll give you an example. ESU, when ESU is making an entry into the building for, let's say, an armed perpetrator or an active shooter, SRG would take the perimeter. Okay, because we want to make sure that the person doesn't come out. We trust SRG. They all have long guns. So we know that SRG is going to do that. They're going to provide appropriate security for the perimeter. And that's what I felt the National Guard was doing. So I had really no issues with it. Within, as long as they stay within their lane, right? So I don't expect them to now start doing, like you said, car stops or any other, particular law enforcement actions that the local law enforcement should do. But within their jurisdiction, under the supremacy clause and everything else, let them do that. I don't think there's anywhere that they should not be able to do that if that's what they're called in to do, to support. So I know that I just saw recently that there's a possibility that the National Guard will continue to be deployed into Washington D.C. till now 2026. So I understand. The only thing I feel not so much that it's illegal or anything else is that, to me, I remember that National Guard, as we know, is some of our officers are National Guardsmen. There's other people that are National Guardsmen. It's not usually a full-time position, right? You get mobilized and you all come together, and then you go out as the force. So some of them are away from their families, missing their jobs, and their jobs are secured. So when they come back, they should still have their jobs. But I mean, that to me, that's that's a little problematic for family life. But I think, are they doing a great job? Absolutely. The proof is in the pudding, right? So I'm good with it.
100%. So let's see what MSNBC had to say about this, because we got to get through this quick.
It is a big deal, and I want to just correct one thing and then explain why functionally it is the same. This is a stay of Judge Immergut's opinion, and that's why it reached the Ninth Circuit as soon as it did, because this is an emergency motion to essentially pause her order. But as a functional matter, you are absolutely correct. It has the function of overturning her order and thereby allowing the president to send the National Guard back onto the streets of Portland. And Katie, I want to read, if I can, just from a little bit of the beginning of this 93-page opinion. It says, after considering the record, and by the record they mean all the factual evidence at this preliminary stage, we conclude that it is likely that the president lawfully exercised his statutory authority under 10 U.S.C. Section 12406. That's the statute we've been referring to as Title 10 when we have conversations about the National Guard deployments, which authorizes the federalization of the National Guard when the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. And this is the important part. The evidence the president relied on reflects, quote, a colorable assessment of the facts and law within a range of honest judgment. We thus conclude that defendants are likely to succeed on the merits of their appeal, basically saying that when and if a court considers all of the record in this matter is tried and it gets back to an appellate court through an ordinary process where they have full briefing and full evidence, that they still think Donald Trump is likely to prevail there because he has the discretion to determine, as the president, within a range of honest judgment, when it is reasonable to deploy the Guard.
You and I were talking.
So there you go. They basically, not only did they reverse it, they said, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
You have no standing. So there you go. And again, this is not allowing him to come in and just be the national police force, like some people are saying. He's saying that I'm going to send him in to protect federal property and federal agents. Now, unfortunately, because of the way that people are acting and how these protesters aren't protesting in a respectful manner, as some people think they are, then now they're being brought out, and now they are on the streets. But they're not on the streets to patrol the streets. They're there to protect the federal agents that are doing their job. So you're bringing it upon yourself, right? You're bringing it upon yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't want them out there. Well, then act like big boys and girls, you know?
Don't poke the tiger.
I called somebody's bluff on a timeout. So we'll just leave it at that. Got a couple more comments, and anything else on this? I mean, you went into it pretty good. It's a tough job. They're not trained to be police, like you said. They're a force multiplier, but they're a defense. They're a defense. They're the defensive line, right? Think of it as football. They're the defensive line for the quarterback, or the offensive line and the defensive line, right? Where they're defending the certain locations like 26 Federal Plaza, if they come to New York, or the federal buildings elsewhere, right? Any federal property. But they also now have to be offensive in these operations because ICE agents are being attacked. They're being attacked, and not only are they just being attacked, they're not getting support from local law enforcement when they're being attacked, which is the big issue.
Yeah. Totally agree. They're there for a purpose, and they stay within their lane, then they're doing the right thing. So. Would you want to go to, I only saw one, if you want to do the executive perspective questions?
Sure. All right. Well, now let me take her down. We'll get to the portion of the show of Asking Executive where you get to ask Rob and myself a question, because a lot of times people don't have access to executives. So feel free. We have a couple of questions in the comments here. And then if you have a question, throw it in there real quick. We're going to be quick with this. It's 6:57. So the debate is starting in a couple of minutes. So we'll just get to a couple of questions and then get out of here. Yeah. Did you have anything written down, Rob?
There was one question that was early on from PB at 0643.
What was the question? Do you know?
I didn't write the question down, but I can get to the 0643. And the question was,
Chief, do you think there's a paid protesters to intimidate ICE?
100%. I think they're well funded. They're paid. I think they're even paid more when they get arrested. If you ever been at one of these demonstrations and there's one or two idiots that have or mopes, I'm going to use mopes. One or two mopes have on their side says legal, and somebody gets arrested. What do they do? First thing they do, they run over. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? And the person getting arrested gets their name. I think they even get more money when they get arrested. 100%.
Yeah,
that's why they're out there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And again, Breadbasket asked if I think Sliwa has a shot. I think absolutely Sliwa has a shot. I think that people need to stop. I put out a post today on my X. We put out a post together yesterday on the Executive Perspectives X account. So like it's on the scroll and on the bottom, follow us at Exec Perspective, or you can also send questions offline to the Executive Perspective at gmail.com, or you can DM us at the Exec Perspective on X, and we will, if we don't bring it up on the show, we will respond back to you in the email. Some comments, well, we don't feel appropriate to bring up, but to answer your question, the Executive Perspective, we proudly endorse Curtis Sliwa for the next mayor. We believe he's the only one that could possibly have a chance to bring us back to the greatness in this city.
They got a last question by Hassan Mo, right? A good friend of the podcast. Always
we love you, brother.
Right? Says, hey, Chief and Inspector, what job would you take if Sliwa wins the mayor? Ron, what are you taking?
I'm going down the rabbit hole, my friend. Bring me back Deputy Commissioner of Candidate Assessment. Let me straighten that shit out.
Well, right there. All right. I'm going to go I'm going to try something new. I'm a deputy commissioner of sanitation. I'm going to clean up this city.
There you go.
That's all.
There you go.
Oh, and Hard X Core, I
Go ahead.
apologize. He
Throw a
called
couple
me
more.
out again. He called me out again. I said 0643. I've been retired for 3 years. It should have been 1843. I'm sorry, Hard X Core. You're 100% right, brother.
Yeah, he did. I saw that. I wasn't gonna bring it up.
He called me. He got me. He got me. He's right. He's right. I'll take the criticism. I accept it.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm missing the 10-4 tab for some reason. So we're gonna jump off.
Yeah, Hard. It's 7 o'clock now. So
it's 7 o'clock. So they're probably just doing the introductions and giving the rules out. But don't forget tomorrow at 1:05 p.m. I don't know who's on his show tomorrow, but you have the Sal Greco show at 13:05, 1:05 p.m. on the Finest Unfiltered Network. And then on Friday, you'll have John, Eric, and Marlon doing the roundtable. They'll recap the week in events, and I'm sure talking about tonight's debate, even though we're going to have an X space going on. They have it going on right now on Tuesday, and I'm going to have to try and go back. Give me 1 second. There we go. On Tuesday, they had Chief Robert Boyce, retired chief of detectives. You brought it up earlier. Gentleman and a scholar. Great stories, a great interview. Go back and watch the recorded episode. And then again on Tuesday, they'll have another guest on. Tuesday, 7:05 p.m., 19:05 p.m. Sal will be on earlier at 1:05. And then next Wednesday, we'll be back at 5:05 for the next executive perspective. So don't forget, everybody jump over John D. McCary on X and jump into the X space with us. We'll be on with the other members of the Finest Unfiltered family. Marlon will be on, Eric, John, Sal, Jack.
Everybody.
All be on.
Everybody from the family will be on.
The whole Finest Unfiltered family will be on. So we appreciate. I don't have it, Eric. Eric's texted me to put the QR code up. Don't forget. All right, let me throw up the finestunfiltered.com, www.thefinestunfiltered.com, and that is the newly updated website where you could look at and you could sign up at the bottom of any page on the website. Sign up for and subscribe for the weekly newsletter that has nothing to do with any of the shows, signing up and subscribing for any of the shows. Your information won't be shared. So sign up. You'll get the weekly newsletter, and you can go get the weekly newsletter. I guess I have to go into their background now. There we go. I don't think that's the right one, though. Oh, okay. So there's the finestunfiltered.com. There's a QR code. If you're watching on the computer, use your phone, take out the camera lens, and yeah, I had to change the background to the Finest Unfiltered. I'm gonna have to copy that over to our media assets. And you could go onto our www.thefinestunfiltered.com. There's bios on all the hosts for all the shows. So we really appreciate all the engagement, and
the debates on YouTube also, right? I think you can download the NY Spectrum app, but you can get on. Yeah.
So you're gonna go to YouTube, or right. I don't know if it's on their X.
No, I thought it was just YouTube and the New York one. I thought you could download the app for free and watch it tonight with New York, but YouTube is where it's at. Yeah, it's definitely on YouTube.
Yeah, you have to open up in the app. It doesn't allow you to watch it on X. So yeah, jump over to YouTube. That's what I'm going to do right now. So We really appreciate the interaction. Rob, any final words before we go?
No, just enjoy the debate. Let's go, Curtis, and we'll talk to you all on the X base afterwards.
All right. Till next week, everybody. Be safe.